Today, the Porsche company falls under the Volkswagen Auto Group, but believe it or not, it never used to be this way. In fact, it was almost the other way around. Let's go back in time and see how this relationship happened. The year is 2005. Volkswagen has $123 billion in annual sales, and profits were only at about $2.2 billion, and market capitalization only at $17 billion. It wasn't a sought-after company because people believed it was a bad company. So rumors began that either an American or Japanese automaker might swallow them up. Because after all, $17 billion wasn't an impossible amount of money to shell out. But most importantly to Porsche, Volkswagen played a huge part in their success because at the time, Porsche was using Volkswagen SUV chassis, and by 2005, 1/3 of Porsche's sales came from the Cayenne SUV, which was using these Volkswagen chassis. This collaboration alone helped Porsche save hundreds of millions of dollars. And potentially, if Volkswagen is bought up by another company, this could ruin their ability to make Porsche cars using Volkswagen platforms. So knowing this, Porsche announced on September 25, 2005, they were paying $4.2 billion to acquire a 20% stake in Volkswagen. This was a big portion of Porsche's cash reserves, which was $6 billion at the time. But with this power move, Porsche ensures that no other automaker can swoop up and buy out Volkswagen. The CEO made it clear that this acquisition was only to prevent other automakers' potential takeover, and also that they had no intention of trying to take over Volkswagen themselves. Our planned investment is the strategic answer to this risk. We wish in this way to ensure the independence of the Volkswagen Group. This move shocked everyone, asking questions like, why is a sports car company investing so much in a struggling car maker? Another rule that may stand in the way of Porsche acquiring Volkswagen was the Volkswagen rule. The rule stated that the government will always own 20% of Volkswagen. This was to prevent anyone from buying Volkswagen without the government knowing. But at the time, Porsche thought that this rule will soon be repealed. So as of now, it was no worries to them. In August 2006, Porsche acquired another 5% stake in the company, making their overall stake in the company at 25%, still insisting that they have no plans on completely owning the company. But at the same time, they were pressuring the government of Germany to get rid of the Volkswagen rule, to make it fair play for all of its shareholders. By November of 2006, Porsche increased their stake in the company to 29.9%. Porsche referred to Volkswagen as a gold mine with lots of opportunity. But once again, Porsche kept stating that it had no intentions of buying out Volkswagen. By March 2007, Porsche had acquired 31% of Volkswagen, and by now, Volkswagen stock price has doubled since Porsche first started buying them. 1 year later, in March 2008, Porsche was authorized by the board of members to increase their stake in the company to 50%. And by this point, the stock prices had tripled since Porsche first started buying them, and this makes Volkswagen the most valuable company in the world in terms of market capitalization. Many believed that share price was artificially inflated due to Porsche, and that there was no fundamental reasoning behind this growth because in fact, Volkswagen was having poor performance. Also, many believed that Porsche would drop this quest to acquire Volkswagen because of the Volkswagen rule, and also because of the fact that Porsche still kept insisting they won't buy out Volkswagen. So a potential stock plummet was inevitable to the public eye. But to Porsche, selling off these shares would cause the stock prices to drop dramatically, since people's interest would fade in Volkswagen if Porsche sold. And also, if Porsche continued to buy, it would be too expensive because they'd keep propping up the price. They had found themselves in a very tricky situation. In 2008, when the financial crisis struck, banks were not lending money. So it became likely that Porsche could not borrow money from the banks to keep acquiring Volkswagen shares. Therefore, Volkswagen became the most shorted stock on the market. 12.8% of its shares were being shorted. In basic terms, shorting a stock means to sell a stock first and buying it back for cheaper price at a later time. In October 27, 2008, Porsche had 42.6% stake in Volkswagen, and they secretly acquired another 31.5% stake in the company. This makes them the owner of 74.1% of shares. This had a few impacts. 1. The share price shot up from $200 to $500, then from $500 to just under $1,000. Once again, becoming the most valued company by market capitalization. Second, with stock prices going up, this was bad news for anyone shorting the stock. And third, with Porsche owning 74.1% and the government owning the other 20% of Volkswagen, very little was left to be traded by the public. At this point, despite what Porsche had said in the past, now they have stated they will pursue a full domination agreement, or to own 75% of Volkswagen. This will allow them to have access to Volkswagen's $12 billion cash reserves, which Porsche can ultimately use to help finance this move. In 2 days, the short sellers lost billions of dollars. But on the third day, Porsche agreed to make 5% of their shares available to the public. This brought back the prices down and also provided liquidity to buyers. With Porsche owning 74.1% of shares, very close to having access to the Volkswagen $12 billion cash reserves once they acquire 75%. And them thinking that the government would repeal the Volkswagen rule, everything was looking really good for Porsche. Except, this all fell to pieces. And just to scratch the surface of all this, Ferdinand Porsche, the CEO of Volkswagen at the time, was the grandson of Ferdinand Porsche, the founder of Porsche. So Porsche was actually profiting off Porsche's purchases of Volkswagen since he had equity in Porsche as his birthright. Porsche was born with 10% equity in Porsche since he is the grandson of Ferdinand Porsche, and was also a board member of Porsche, meanwhile being the CEO of Volkswagen. So to say all this is a conflict of interest is an understatement. Also, among some rules in Porsche, a family member cannot be the CEO of Porsche, so this is why Ferdinand Porsche could not have just ran Porsche from the start. In a way, his entitlement to Porsche was taken. So in 2008, Porsche was $13 billion in debt, but also very close to acquiring 75% of Volkswagen to unlock their cash reserves of $12 billion. And so they had a lot counting on this deal. Their shares in Volkswagen held a lot of paper value. Moreover, if they began to sell, prices of their shares would drop dramatically, but also it was getting very expensive to acquire the rest of Volkswagen, so they were not at a good place. Porsche owed 15 different banks, which neither of them were interested in lending out more money to them, and in fact, they had to pay $4.4 billion back to these banks by September of 2009. Also, Porsche's income had dropped by 27% due to the financial crisis, so deep down, Porsche knew the quest to acquire Volkswagen was over. Just a few months prior, everyone was calling Porsche geniuses. But now, it was all falling apart. With sales of their cars down dramatically, and $4.4 billion due back to the banks within 6 months, and no one willing to lend them more money, Porsche needed to be bailed out. They were near a bankruptcy. So luckily, one of the board members of Porsche agreed to help them out with a $1 billion loan from his other company. This board member was Ferdinand Porsche. Yes, the CEO of Volkswagen is a board member of Porsche and agreed to give a $1 billion loan to Porsche. This loan was kept a secret for 2 months. But it turned out, the $1 billion loan that Volkswagen had given Porsche came with string attached, stating that if Porsche cannot pay this loan back, they would offer themselves up for sale to Volkswagen. And as expected, Porsche was not able to pay this loan back to Ferdinand Porsche. And suddenly the predator became the prey. All hopes of Porsche trying to acquire Volkswagen was dropped. And now it was Volkswagen's turn to strike. By July 2009, the CEO of Porsche had resigned. And so by fall 2009, Volkswagen acquired Porsche AG for $11.3 billion cash. Porsche AG, the carmaker, is now fully owned by Volkswagen AG, while Porsche SE, the holding company, which is controlled by the Porsche and Porsche families, is Volkswagen's largest shareholder that holds 32% equity of Volkswagen. And so under Ferdinand Porsche's leadership, he took back his grandfather's company, and his stake became in both Porsche and Volkswagen, and today it is worth billions of dollars.